Oh, it's funny. I don't know if you've ever heard. I was explaining it to my 12-year-old son the other day. I was a psych undergraduate and did some graduate work in psychology, but there's something called the Schachter's two-tier theory of emotion. And what it is that, all physiological responses to emotion are pretty much the same. The heartbeat goes up, you get a little sweaty in the palms and everything. And as the theory goes, a person looks out into the environment and looks for cues and then attributes this emotion to that particular stimuli. Mm-hmm. So Ovid, the writer back in the early Roman Empire days, this was of course he didn't realize it was the theory he was working, but this is an example of the theory, is that he said to young men who wanted to basically get laid, is that you should bring your young lady to the stadium, place a cushion underneath her seat, she will look onto the games, her heart will race, she will turn to you, and just assume that she loves you, or wants you at least. So that, right, my friend.
That's the same. It's the same reverse response as if you're not happy, smile more, and there's a reverse response. If you smile more, you will become happier because the smiling actually releases oxytocin.
Yeah. It's cheap Jedi tricks. That's what. That's all this is.
Yeah,
a lot of just getting by.
It's just hacking your stupid meat computer that is your body.
And it is stupid.
So that's right. You're back in the singles pool. How's that working out for you?
It's good. I have no complaints. I've been on OkCupid for a couple of months, and it is I got material out of that right away. Because I don't know if you've ever been on OkCupid.
Oh, no,
but so what happens is that you have to ask questions. They ask you questions. You decide which questions you want to answer, and they use those answers to match you with the appropriate person. And there are some crazy questions out there. There is one that is, do you believe in dinosaurs? Do you believe in dinosaurs? And I put down yes. And then there's an opportunity to comment, to write in something underneath your, the answer. And I just thought they were asking, I think a lot of people might have been thinking that they were asking about dragons. So I said, this is a question about dinosaurs and not fire-eating, breathing, smog the dragon kind of creatures, just to help clarify the question. And I'm actually seeing someone now exclusively. That's been going well. I have no complaints about that. I was married. For those of you who aren't aware, I've been married I was married for 20 years. So dating was a very interesting experience. All kinds of women out there, very nice. Yeah, and that's the thing about OkCupid, is that you realize that there are a lot of intelligent women out there, and every single date I went on via OkCupid, every single woman had at least a 5-minute spiel about how the men on OkCupid are not even close to being as qualified as the women on OkCupid.
That's the problem with dating sites for men. The signal-to-noise ratio that women have to dig through is ridiculous. So, guys don't have that problem, and we don't see it. If you want to do an interesting social experiment, listeners, here's something that you can do for free, cheap, and easy. Go onto Craigslist and post an ad as a woman, and watch what happens to your inbox. It is fucking ridiculous.
Sure. Well, yeah, you look at these profiles on OkCupid, and a lot of the time,
with a picture on Craigslist.
Sure. Oh yeah. Man, we're horrible. Right, we're horrible.
There are men who just go through every profile and will send a message, DTF, right down the list.
Sure.
And
sure.
It's
mad.
These people are, but
they're obviously very motivated, but in a really unproductive way.
It borders on OCD.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. On OkCupid, you'll see a lot of women have, for their first paragraph,
list of things
if you're under a certain age, if you don't understand grammar, if you're all in full caps, there's no need for you to message me.
If your picture is with your shirt off, I see that one a lot.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? What really makes it confusing, at least on OkCupid, is that they give you a percentage on how much you're compatible. So I could, in fact, one of my ex-girlfriends, even though I've been separated from my, officially soon to be ex-wife for about a year, I did date, several women, for some time. And I was looking at my ex-girlfriend's profile, and they said that we were like 96% compatible. And, that 4% really means a lot.
It really
it's
depends
kind of like
on
DNA.
What that 4% is.
It's like DNA. That's what it is. Yeah. You got a 4% difference in DNA with another species, and that could mean pretty big differences.
Sure. That's us and chimps.
That's exactly it. There was also, I was just about to meet this girl. She lived out in the western part of the state. And I was looking through her questions because there's a bunch of questions. There's like a ton of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going through her questions, and then I realized that one of these, I'd never seen this question before, and it was, have you ever tortured small animals for pleasure? And I'm not making this up. And she stated yes. And I'm like,
Those people need love too.
They do. And I had a moral crisis. I talked to my best female friend and compatriot and roommate, and we both agreed. Well, she actually convinced me about probably not the best idea. So
probably not.
I wish everyone who has been able to rehabilitate themselves from torturing small animals for pleasure.
I can see an instance where interesting thing though, right? If you come across that question and you are a generally attractive woman, right?
Yeah.
Could you see someone having the wherewithal to saying yes to that question, knowing that it would just cut down on the number of people in your list that you have to deal with? Because if guys are going through and emailing everyone who shows up in their list of, potential matches, knowing that if you answer yes to that question, you are taking yourself out of a statistically significant group of guys dating pool, right?
Sure. Well, you have to ask.
You're just trying to. You could legitimately answer yes to that question just in an attempt to cut down on the amount of bullshit email you get.
But you wouldn't be cutting away the fat, so to speak. You'd be cutting away potentially.
Well, you kind of would be, because the guys who are players and just out to get laid every night are going to say no to that question because they know that is not something that is a desirable trait, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so they build their profiles in sociopathic ways to
right.
be most. Come on, that's the whole. What is it called? Whatever the movement that's based on the game is entirely.
I understand. Yeah, the game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's entirely based on that.
The pickup artistry of it all.
Yeah. That's right. Pickup artists. Yeah, I interviewed him, by the way.
Did you really?
Yeah, Neil Strauss. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that go?
Well, he's a nice guy. He really is. And he wrote the definitive Rolling Stone article on Kurt Cobain's suicide.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Long before the pickup artist thing happened. I mean, the pickup artist thing for him was really just another investigative journalism opportunity. I like him as a person. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, he came across in the book as a good guy, surrounded by morally suspect people, to say the least.
Yeah, and by the time the book actually came out and got published, he was in a steady relationship. Well, I say steady relationship. It was with Hull's bass player, so I don't know how stable that is. But
well, you should enjoy it as long as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
All the more power to him.
Look, man. Going out into the dating scene and picking people up for one night stands, that's one thing. Relationships, whole different skill set. Skill set.
It is a whole different skill set, and you got to have a higher tolerance for stuff. Yeah, definitely. I'm not bitter. I consider myself a realist, not a cynic.
Yeah. No, he's an okay guy. He really is.
Right.
I don't know about some of the other ones, but Neil's he's okay.
Yeah. So I was actually looking through the contents of my short story book. See, this is a cheap plug and cheap transition on my part.
Just gonna do it anyway. So
yeah, we're vibing it. We're feeling it right now, and we're on the same wavelength. Yes, I was looking through the table of contents and wondering what was actually in, because I'm writing another book right now, and I'm editing another book, And I was like, I should reacquaint myself with exactly what's in here. It's like, oh, it doesn't. It doesn't suck. All right, I remember this.
Yeah, I'm
sure.
a little more reacquainted because I just finished it this morning. So.
Oh, okay, very good, very good.
But yeah, so Andrew Scott Hall, I noticed you put that on the cover, which
actually one of my recent ex-girlfriends who is in marketing, still very good. She's we still get along very well with each other. But she recommended that because Andrew Hall is such a generic name. I mean, there must be like a million other white guys who have that name. She recommended throwing the Scott in there.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think so too.
If you think of famous sci-fi authors that have that 4-syllable kind of thing, you get your Orson Scott Cards and your
Marvel
Philip K.
line,
Dick.
too.
That's what it is.
Philip K. Dick, right?
Philip K. Dick is
Sheep's dreaming of things, right? The Blade Runner guy.
Yeah, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Electric Sheep,
yeah. So syllabically, you're in good company.
Yeah, whenever I go on stage, which isn't when I do stand-up comedy, I always go with Andy Hall just because it's easier, and it seems to be a better name.
Yeah,
it's a better name for drunks to relate to.
You want Andy in a stand-up name because that's relatable.
It's relatable.
You want to be friendly off the bat, right?
Right. Well, yeah, you got to be. Yeah, people have to bond with you in some way. And if my name doesn't do it, then I have this really good incest joke I lead in with. So that wins the crowd over. Yeah. Who can't relate to that, right?
Yeah. Oh, so we should probably do an intro that I can cut in at the beginning.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, definitely.
So Andrew Scott Hall, you're here because you have a new book out.
Yes, I have it on very good information, sir. That I do have a new book out.
I'm interested to know because we've known each other for a while, and you come from a stand-up and atheist background, and it kind of caught me by surprise when I saw you were doing vampire fiction, and I know that when you're writing, because I did a book ages ago, like over probably 12 years ago now, is when I did my novel, and I know that you don't have any control over what it is you're writing. Right? Stuff comes out and then you edit it later and you're left with what you're left with.
Yeah.
So I really kind of want to know what pulled you into vampire fiction.
Well, and I mentioned this in the introduction to the book, is that I was scared shitless of vampires when I was a kid. I was a really high-strung kid, 8, 9, 10 years old. Let's face it, for my entire life I've been rather high-strung, and vampires just happened to click in. I don't know if I saw our movie. I don't know if it was that Gilligan's Island episode. I'm old, by the way, but your audience probably already can guess that. That Gilligan's Island, because I was scared of Gilligan being turned into a vampire, or maybe the vampire Scooby-Doo episode, and it affected me so much that actually when I was going to bed, and I still do this too, just out of habit, that I always have to pull the sheet over by my neck to make sure that if the vampire does get me, then at least I have a chance.
Yes, you have the resistance of that eighth of an inch of cotton.
Exactly. I'll be able to scurry away maybe, or do something to protect myself. But they always.
I would imagine that if a lot of people really thought about it, they would realize that is not necessarily an uncommon response. Maybe not the vampire thing per se, but I guarantee you that there is a statistically significant portion of the population that can't get to sleep unless if their foot is sticking off of the bed because they're worried that the monster is going to reach up and grab it.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure that there is a statistically significant portion of the population who, deep in their reptile brain, that's a thing.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. So vampires always scared me and fascinated me too, because they're pretty much projections of who we are in the world, and they need death to live, as we do in some certain ways. We eat plants. We're not photosynthetic. We're not taking the raw energy of the sun, so we require death to live. And the idea about being immortal and about the problems that come with being immortal interest me. And vampires are just like science fiction, any kind of science fiction. I mean, it's a good forum to talk about whatever's bothering me or whatever's floating around in my head. Like in this particular short story book, there's a bunch of identity issues going on. A lot of the characters are struggling with who they are, unaware of who they are.
Struggling is an understatement for some of those.
Yes. Yes.
Straight out psychotic breaks are things that happen.
Right. Yeah. Psychotic breaks. And so I really wanted to, use vampires to explore those kind of topics.
Yeah, and it was really enjoyable. I did like it a lot.
Thanks.
Which is a weird thing. I haven't really been a vampire fiction person since, high school and the Anne Rice craze.
Right. And when you're reading a really good story, even though they may have genre conventions of whatever it is, if you're talking about zombies or you're talking about vampires, but a really good story is a really good story with these particular things in it.
Right. And just offering my opinion on it. I read the book and I noted that, so there's a few different kinds of vampire literature out there. There's your Bram Stoker Dracula vampire fiction, which is all Victorian, and it's all just an analogy for sex and being afraid of sex.
Yep.
And then there's your Anne Rice vampire fiction, which is kind of the polar opposite, where it's still all about sex, but a revelry in it being about sex.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of your White Wolf fiction genre. White Wolf is a role-playing company that makes Vampire Masquerade.
Yes, I'm quite aware of Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, and your stuff seems to fall more in that category, where it's all, each of the different kinds of vampires seem to represent some sort of psychological anomaly or another. Yeah,
true enough. It's much more. I
hate to over-explain it because I know how that is with fiction. You don't want to bury the lead. You just buy the ticket, take the ride, and don't think about it too hard.
The way that I wanted to structure the stories, because I've read through a bunch of vampire short stories. There are books out there full of vampire short stories, and they seem to break down on. And I think you say this about every short story, is that there are ones that are really structured well, and then there are ones that are more atmospheric or more for the aesthetic, so to speak.
Sure.
And of course there are ones that that are able to do both of those at the same time. And I think that what I was really trying to do was trying to do a really good structure. And what happens with a good structure is that it forces the person or the reader, or doesn't force, but it nudges the reader to reconsider the story within the last paragraph or two. And in doing so, it kind of like shifts your brain into more of a meta kind of way of thinking about the story and hopefully, thinking about yourself.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, and there are really great examples of that in vampire fiction. Like, if you're familiar with White Wolf, just an aside, they put this book out at some point in the late 90s called Dark Diary.
So I remember hearing about that, yeah.
It was really a thing of genius. Like, it came in a slipcover, and it looked like a diary, like yellow wallpaper level fucked up. Like, because it was just, written entirely from a first-person perspective of this person who got changed and slowly got worse and worse. And then there were, like, blank pages in the middle, and
you can do a lot of fun
his handwriting got worse and worse. It was amazing. Like, there's so much you can do with digital technology and stuff now that could open it up to that. It's really kind of hard to do with Kindle store books.
Yes, true enough.
Because you're just submitting an HTML unless you scan each individual page, turn them into image files, and
right.
But I think there's a lot of room for that kind of market.
I think so too. And the thing is that there's always going to be a market for people who want to read about vampires.
Yeah, no, true.
Actually, one of the stories in the book, in the short story book, actually comes from the first person, the Night Master, and you get to see how
that was trippy. It really was.
Yeah.
Well, it bounces back and forth, right? Like,
it does. It does bounce back and forth. Yeah.
That was a little jarring, personally. I would like to have seen some sort of annotation that would have dictated when it was switching.
Oh, yeah, I could see that, sure.
I don't hate you for not putting that in there. It's
okay.
just, I mean, I got it. It took me a couple words into the paragraph to say, "Oh, we've switched voices." Okay, but
right. No. Very true. Very true.
But that was a fun story. Actually, I really enjoyed watching that back and forth, and that's where I was talking about psychotic breaks. In that particular story was, where you had this vampire who just clearly could not deal with what happened to him.
Oh yeah,
he built an entire imaginary world where he was a superhero.
Oh yeah.
Great story. So
well, the thing is too, I mean, I always like to talk about how, and this is common with writers or people who think about villains a lot, is that the villain is the hero in his own story. So
oh no, absolutely. I wrote a thing for one of my best friends is a huge Superman fan, and at some point for his birthday I wrote him a Superman story from Lex Luthor's perspective.
Sure.
And it was so much fun to do because it was just this whole thing about how, here I am, I'm spending all this money on charities and helping the poor and building, low-income housing, and I'm doing all this stuff, and that motherfucker with his underwear outside his pants is getting all the credit. What the fuck? I'm so angry.
The thing is with the short stories too, is that you can do some. Well, at least what I was doing is like definitely experimental stuff, and at least with the Nightmaster thing. And the good thing about short stories is that you can do something experimental, and it's like a joke. If it goes really well, or if like a lot of people like it, it's like, oh, that's good, And if they don't, well, there's going to be another joke coming soon, or another short story coming up very soon. So you could definitely tell.
Yeah, there's a very small time investment to short stories.
Yeah, because if you have like a whole, Stephen King-ish length novel in a very experimental kind of written in an experimental manner, you may not catch a lot of people, or you may not keep a lot of people invested in the book.
Sure. Yeah. That's like what is it? Is it Leaves of Grass?
That sounds familiar.
House of Leaves is the book.
House of Leaves. All right.
Yeah. If you've never read it or looked at it, it is insane. Like, you get about 3 pages in, and then everything goes to hell. Things start shifting, and stuff's written sideways and wrong, and certain words are printed in colors for no reason, apparently.
Sounds good. I'm going to write that.
It's impressive in how weird it is as a form of literature, because the thing to me is that it was kind of the first book that started to take advantage of seriously new technology, mainly because of stuff like, words aren't always just straight down the page, and some words are in different colors. And some of them are clips, and all of them are from different perspectives. It's an amazing book to sit down and just get lost in for a while, but it's a hard book to sit down and get lost in if you are no longer in college and have to go to a job every day, It's kind of like watching Zero Theorem, If you don't have a weekend to kill, don't watch Zero Theorem.
There just seems to be, and I wanted to touch on this, is that, when talking about what a good story is, and a good story happens to have the genre elements thrown in there to tell a really good story. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought about the Captain America movies. Now, I like the Captain America movies. The first Captain America movie was a World War II movie with a superhero in it. The second Captain America movie struck me as like a Jason Bourne movie that had a superhero in it. Oh, you may hate those movies. I don't know, but
interestingly enough, and you're going to find this probably to be an overly flattering comparison, but there was a point when I was reading through your short story book that it became clearly apparent that what you were doing in that book was world building, which is why it's no surprise that you have another novel on the way and another one in the works.
Yeah.
It was clear that you were shaping to something, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
The comparison that comes to mind most readily is the Wild Card series, which is a little different because it was written by a bunch of different people.
Sure.
But it was edited by George R.R. Martin, who I assume everybody knows at this point. But the thing about that book in particular, they were at a convention, him and a bunch of other writers, and they decided to play a Call of Cthulhu campaign, and he said, I'll DM. And it just snowballed into this, well, okay, so here's what happens. Yeah. Every time your character is the voice of the chapter, you write that chapter. And that made for a continuous story, but it was all broken up chapter by chapter based on whose voice it was telling the story. Right, and so that was also definitely something where, you read the first 2 books in that series and you see how it's just, they start with nothing and the world just takes shape. Yeah. So what I'm seeing with your books is you spent this short story book kind of setting the tone for the world that you're trying to build.
Yeah, and there is a, because I write comedy too, and I perform comedy, it's about tone. The tone that I write for the short story book and for the novel that I'm editing through right now, it's very different in this than what, I would have to make a clean break and from the 3 things from these 3 books that are pretty much all clumped together, the 2 short story books and the novel. They definitely have a certain brand on them. There's certain, like I said, a certain kind of aesthetic with them. That, and even though they may sound differently ear-wise. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, not just, aesthetically, but what I'm saying is, with these collection of short stories, you're setting a tone for the world in which the novels take place. Like, your world building, which is kind of a role-playing term for DMs are prone to use for, I'm inventing a reality, and they kind of get all pretentious about it because they're DMs and that's what they do, right? But
when you play God, I mean, there's a certain amount of pretentiousness that goes with the job.
Right, and you can definitely see those elements taking shape, where it saves you trouble, where it's like, okay, if you read all this short story stuff, you kind of have a solid basis from which to launch into a full novel about this stuff, right? Yeah. Because we've laid some groundwork about what you already know exists in this world. But yeah,
it's a lot of, the thing is when you're writing stuff, and I think a lot of writers don't understand exactly how much marketing actually goes into.
No, because ideally it's not their fucking job.
Yeah.
Right. Writers write, editors edit, publishers publish, and they're all 3 different things that shouldn't have anything to do with each other. But we're getting into, this is kind of like my problem with journalism right now, where back in the day, journalists, they went out, they did all the legwork, they found the information, they wrote the information down, the editor basically spell and grammar checked them and said, well, this is what we will publish, this is what we won't publish, but basically, everybody knew what their job was.
Yeah.
What you look at now, where like you see a job listing for, AP reporter, and AP reporters now are expected to be able to do audio editing, to do video editing, to do, it's just like, how the fuck are you supposed to find time to actually be a news person if you also have to be fluent in GarageBand? And it's like, there's no time for that if you are a 1-person production studio.
Sure.
That's one of the things that makes, Kindle Store a very useful tool, because it cuts out a lot of the bullshit. You don't need to think about formatting. You don't need to, you just put everything out, and here it is, and you can pick what font you want. You can pick how big you want the font. No one needs to think about that shit, right?
Right. True enough. It's funny because in comedy, it's similar. Louis C.K., he writes, he directs, he edits the show, and that's one of the things that got him, the sweetheart deal that he has.
He's that one of the guy does everything. Men in comedy.
Yeah.
And that's why when he shows up on stage, he's in jeans and a t-shirt, because goddammit, you're not getting me into a suit, because I'm fucking busy.
So hey, I appreciate being on. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's great to have you on again.
Oh yeah. Always good. And I'm hoping to actually get the second book out, or to get the novel out, 90 days.
Also, I will point out that Andy's book is in the Prime book and Kindle Lending Library stuff. So if you're a Prime member, you can read the book for free, and Andy still gets some money out of it.
Even better. Hey, and one of the things I was hoping for too is that if people really liked characters in the short story book I have out now, then when they review, and please review the book on Amazon, you can definitely say which character you like, and then I will actually write more stuff about that character. You never know what resonates with people.
Yeah, no, it's hard to tell. Well, Andy, thanks for being here, man. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate having you.
Had a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Got to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Next book, no problem.
Awesome. How's how did your yoga book for Cthulhu work out?
Well, it paid for the hosting of the show for the course of 2014, so
that's good.
That's
good.
That's really all it set out to accomplish. And because of that, that's why I took the logo from it and just put it up as a transparent background PNG on the website. So if anybody wants it, they can take it and put it on anything. I took the liberty of putting it on a pair of yoga pants.
I saw that, actually.
Because I really love the idea of Cthulhu being on, yoga chicks' butts everywhere. But that's just me.
Right.
But yeah, that was what it was. I think I'd really like to do a second one. I have some ideas for second poses, for a second set of more advanced poses and whatnot. But
right.
Like in my brain, I know which yoga poses are Nyarlathotep and Yog-Sothoth and all that, but and I think it's just it was a fun thing to do, and it did what it needed to do, and great,
Good.
So whatever we put out this year to try and pay for stuff, we'll see.